dear viewers, and welcome to ABC World, the voice of Pan-Africanism, bringing you the latest news highlights of the hour. I am Tabitha John. To stay with us, the headlines. A historian says Ethiopian loss of access to sea outlet, shocking story. And Ethiopia and China express commitment to cement comprehensive strategic partnership. Addis Ababa has been selected as a place where other countries can learn from at the first ever global summit of School Meals Coalition, which was held in Paris, France. The city of 6 million, which also serves as the diplomatic capital of Africa, has shared its success story in implementing the school feeding program over the past few years at the School Meals Coalition first global summit, which was held in Paris, France. City Mayor Adanechi Abebe said. Abebe reaffirmed that the Addis Ababa city administration will continue to strengthen the implementation of the program as part of Next Generation Building Program. A delegation of World Health Organization comprising officials and experts from the headquarters and regional office is in Addis Ababa for a working visit. The visit aims at providing support to Ethiopia's rehabilitation efforts in regional states affected due to conflict, according to the Ministry of Health. The delegation is expected to meet with officials of sector ministries, including Health, Women and Social Affairs, as well as National Rehabilitation Commission and other pertinent actors. Welcome back. A historian says Ethiopian ancient and medieval history was characterized by Ethiopian dominance in the region and beyond. This East African nation's loss of access to sea outlet is a shocking incident that should never have happened to such a great nation, according to the historian Associate Professor Ayele Bekri. Shefarao Lakao has interviewed him. Take a listen to this.
Historically speaking, Ethiopia used to have access to sea outlets before it all of a sudden ended up being a landlocked nation. Walk me through those heydays that Ethiopia had alternatives when it comes to sea outlets at hand, and what were the historical elements then?
The ancient historian Herodotus used to identify Red Sea as a part that divides eastern Ethiopia from western Ethiopia.
Wow.
So what the place called Yemen, all that used to be called eastern Ethiopia. Actually, eastern Ethiopia extended all the way to India. All the way to India. In fact,
it was so vast, so huge.
It's a really vast
Wow.
empire that we're talking about. In the ancient times, as well as in the medieval times. Medieval times is starting from the 13th century of the Common Era, all the way to the time when cities became permanent, like building the castles of Gondor. That's an 18th century phenomena. Up to that time, the monarchy was mobile. They were moving from place to place.
Okay.
Even in those times, all the goods that they needed, be it material goods or strategic goods, were brought in without any kind of hindrance. Even in times of the ports being controlled by Turks, and of course at a later period, controlled by Massawa, for instance, was controlled by Egyptians, but still they managed to get access to the sea.
All of a sudden, Ethiopia became, bereft of this opportunity, and it ends up being a landlocked nation in 1993. What's the main reason, and who were the orchestrators, and how did this go down in history from what you have observed?
We have to remember that we have access to the sea for thousands of years.
Yes.
And it was actually the loss, which is really a shock, because you're so familiar with it, you're part of it, your narratives were generated from what you've done on that sea, and then the route to the sea, as well as the return. And with all those historical events and documents and greatness, all of a sudden, when you find yourself that you no longer have access to the sea, that you are landlocked, to say the least, is very shocking.
Ethiopia and China are working to bolster their long-standing bilateral relations to a higher level. The Chinese ambassador to Ethiopia, Zhao Zhiyuan, briefed journalists on the overall activities of the Third Belt and Road Initiative Forum and on the successful visit of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and his delegation. Haptam Washagri tells you more.
Ethiopia and China have built strategic cooperation over the past couple of years in various fields. Building coordinated development is a shared value of the two countries. In connection with the Third Belt and Road Forum last week in China, the two countries have agreed various agreements that help us to further cement the existing strategic partnership in the near future. Briefing journalists, Chinese ambassador to Ethiopia, Hao Daiwan, underlined the major achievements of the forum.
President Xi and Prime Minister Dr. Abiy issued a joint statement between China and Ethiopia on the establishment of our strategic partnership. The high-level exchanges and political mutual trust has been strengthened. As President Xi said, China supports Ethiopia in safeguarding its sovereignty, security, and development interests. The two sides should continue to strengthen solidarity and cooperation.
According to the ambassador, China appreciated Ethiopia's role to boost international trade and green development.
The Chinese side highly appreciates that the Ethiopia side actively joins in the initiative on international trade and economic cooperation framework for digital economy and green development. During the Third Belt and Road Forum, digital and green transition represents two major trends in global economic and social transformation and important drivers of economic growth, with their coordinated development contributing to the economic, social, and environmental dimensions of sustainable development. China will further strengthen cooperation with Ethiopia.
The UN confirmed that Ethiopia and China are cementing comprehensive strategic cooperative partnership. Over 10,000 representatives from 151 countries have attended the forum.
Both the BRF and
An economist hailed Ethiopia's economic growth amidst challenging circumstances. Economic analyst Konstantinos Berihe urged Ethiopia to harness its vast agricultural potential as a catalyst to secure robust economic growth. Goshu Melliso has this report.
Ethiopia is grappling with internal and external challenges. At the opening of the Joint Houses, President Sahle-Work Zewde elaborated key government directions. Among these, the economic sector is at the forefront. Commenting on her speech, an economic analyst held Ethiopia's economy is growing despite numerous challenges.
The fact that the Ethiopian economy is even growing more than 5–6% is big, literally, because most countries don't grow more than 2-3%. Even developed nations like the US, they're trying to achieve a 2% growth. So the fact that our government has said our growth will be more than 7%, although the IMF and the World Bank don't agree with it, they put it probably 1% less than we do. But any growth more than 5% is phenomenal at this time of world economic instability.
Konstantinos urged Ethiopia to harness its vast agricultural potential to secure robust economic growth.
We have important issues like climate change. The fact that we are not using our total capacity. We have huge amount of agricultural land. We export water left and right. You know, Ethiopia is called the water tower of Northeast Africa, but we're not doing this. We're not even using 20% of our agricultural land. And therefore, if there is peace and security, and of course, the incentive for investment, local investment and foreign direct investment, then the vision of our president will be secured.
Apart from the internal instability, the Russia-Ukraine war and the latest Israel-Gaza conflict will have significant impact on Ethiopia's economy, said Konstantinos.
Our country is now facing very serious problems. We have the political instability coming from different regions of Ethiopia. We have the impact of the global pandemic, the COVID pandemic, that's still creating havoc around world economies. We have also now the Ukraine war, and lately we have the Gaza war that's coming up. These international events are going to have tremendous implication on the Ethiopian economy and, of course, the economy of African countries.
IMF forecasts Ethiopia's GDP will increase by 6.1% this year and 6.2% in 2024, surpassing global and regional growth rates.
And finally, a second convoy of trucks loaded with humanitarian aid crossed into Gaza from Egypt as the leaders of Israel and the United States promised a continued flow of desperately needed supplies. 14 aid trucks crossed the Rafah border from Egypt into Gaza on Sunday night, according to the United Nations. Tegus Hernis has the following from the BBC.
The human toll in Gaza is mounting. These casualties brought to Al-Aqsa Hospital in central Gaza are outside the zone from which Israel had told civilians to flee. It is not known where the victims came from, but many of the dead and injured are children.
We have been here since the crack of dawn, and the bodies have completely filled the hospital yard. This is in addition to the bodies in refrigerators, which are full. We don't have enough shrouds for the dead, because the numbers are huge.
Israeli airstrikes in response to the massacre of October 7th are against what it calls strategic Hamas target. No one is getting out of Gaza for now, but through the border with Egypt today, more than a dozen of aid trucks did get in, carrying basic food and medical supplies after an initial transfer of 20 truck loads yesterday. But the UN says it's nowhere near the 500 trucks daily needed to sustain a population of more than 2 million.
30%, according to our sources, Ultra, of the infrastructure is already destroyed. Some people will die if they don't get insulin on a regular basis. There are 50,000 pregnant women in Gaza. Water is absolutely necessary to keep them alive.
But the situation is said to worsen. Thousands of Israeli troops, tanks, and heavy armor are preparing for a full-scale ground offensive in Gaza once bombing from the air achieves its objectives. It's what Israel says it has to do if Hamas is to be crushed.
I have no doubt that Israel will need to go in on the ground to be able to effectively hurt and undermine and weaken Hamas, but also to be able to project power in this region and show the world and its other adversaries that are watching that we have capabilities. And I think it's a matter of day or days until that happens.
In the Palestinian West Bank, city of Jenin, Israel says it hit Hamas cell preparing for an attack.
That's all we had for this hour's news edition. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.